All right, guys, so Season of the Chosen is in full swing, and I'm not gonna lie, I have been having a fantastic time, most notably due to the large amount of loot that is in the game. Today's video, it's gonna be a very long one, but we're gonna go through the process of observing all of the roles found on all the weapons, as well as the exotics. So first up, let's just start with the seasonal exotic. We're gonna be individually reviewing it. It is absolutely disgusting. Ticuu's Divination. I hope I'm saying that right. Comes with the exotic perk Sacred Flame. Hip firing this weapon fires multiple tracking projectiles. Targets marked by these projectiles explode upon death, or when struck by another Sacred Flame explosion. Now the trait is Causality Arrows. Arrows fired while aiming down sights cause Sacred Flames to instantly detonate. This is really nice because you can actually chain with your teammates. If you have other people on your fire team rocking this bow, one of you is hip firing, thus marking the target, applying what essentially is a burn effect without it actually being burn damage. And while that's happening, the other two fire team members can sit there aiming down sights and proccing that max amount of detonation damage with each shot. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Again, we're going to be reviewing it individually here pretty soon because the synergy that it presents with certain subclasses is extremely nice. Moving on to exotic armor pieces. We're going to start with the Titan chest armor, Cuirass of the Falling Star. Comes with the exotic perk Glorious Charge. Greatly increases your Thunder Crash impact damage. Also simultaneously, you gain an overshield that lasts longer the farther you travel before striking a target. Now, will this help inside of PvP? Not necessarily if you get frozen. Like if you get frozen, whether or not you have an overshield doesn't really matter. You get frozen mid-super, it's a good chance you probably just lost your super. However, I think the damage increase is what's gonna make this exotic worth using. If it's actually a big buff there in damage, especially for something like PvE, because Thunder Crash has never been looked at as a PvE super, this might actually put it on the map. Which takes us to the exotic chest armor piece, Omnioculus. Comes with the exotic perk Beyond the Veil. You gain a second smoke bomb charge and have damage resistance while invisible. When you make an ally invisible, they gain damage resistance while invisible and you gain melee energy. Now, immediately when reading this exotic trait, I think of the benefits that this exotic chest piece can bring into PvE, especially Grandmaster content. When you're having to skip certain areas, go invisible, and on top of that, you want to give someone damage resistance. For those moments that ads just get crazy and start shooting in your general direction despite not seeing you, shabammy. This exotic chest piece can keep you alive. Now, what scares me is how much that damage resistance actually is. Imagine this, a full team of 6, one of them rocking this chest piece. He applies the smoke to the entire team. Everyone is now invisible. They all rush the enemy under the veil of invisibility with Fellwinter's Light. Do you see my concern with it? Yeah. I don't know. We'll just have to see what the damage resistance actually is. Moving on to Mantle of Battle Harmony. Oh, this beautiful, sexy Warlock chest armor piece comes with the exotic trait Absorption Cells. Takedowns with weapons that have a damage type matching your subclass element grant you super energy. Now, while your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of the type matching your subclass element. Wow, so much is happening here. First up, this is like Talak, but on an armor piece. Talak was a scout rifle that's DPS would greatly, and I mean greatly increase if you had your super. The moment your super was full, that scout rifle became a monster. This is essentially the same thing, but not tied to a specific weapon. The only thing it is tied to is matching your subclass with whatever element type of your weapon is. I think this is fantastic simply because it's ease of use. And on top of that, getting kills, which I'm assuming is takedowns here, with weapons that have the matching damage type grants you increased super energy. Again, it's a win-win on both ends. Now, those are all the exotics that have been disclosed to us in the database, or at least through Light GG. Not gonna go into the data mine stuff. Instead, let's begin on the very, very long list of legendary weapons present in Season of the Chosen. Starting off, we have the Messenger. Now, there's gonna be an adept version of this weapon, and as far as the roles go, nothing really changes. And we're gonna get into mods in just a moment, but let's just start with the roles themselves. You probably noticed the trait down there. Yes, Desperado is going to be present on this pulse rifle. It's crazy. Bungie, you guys are nuts. And I love it. Desperado, though, states reloading after a precision final blow increases your rate of fire. Now, a different take on Desperado. It's not dependent on Outlaw, as it was with Redrix, but it will be somewhat dependent on how quickly you can reload, which is why you may still want to pair it with Outlaw. But if you really want the best perk overall to pair here with Desperado, hands down, Rapid Hit. The fact that you can get a bump to stability that can rival that of Zen Moments, on top of an increase there in reload speed, that in combination with Desperado is nuts. And even though I normally go for pulse rifles, at least in the high impact archetype like this one, consistency has normally been what I've always strived for. The fact is, Desperado has never been present on any other high impact. Therefore, things like Headseeker, Kill Clip, even One for all those things are good traits. Believe me, they're good, but they're not Desperado good. Hands down, I would actually go Desperado. And if we can possibly work around that reload speed, maybe try moving target or killing wind. But I really think Messenger here, guys, is going to be one of the best pulse rifles in the game. It's present in the kinetic slot. It has a default zoom of 18, matching that of Stars and Shadow. And even though I love pulse rifles like Cold Denial is locked. It does not have good base default zoom. It has less range than most hand cannons because of that base default 14 zoom. So Messenger here has the best of both worlds. The opportunity to roll with fantastic traits like Desperado and even all these other traits which are still very good. One for All, Headseeker, Kill Clip. The only thing that's really crap on this weapon is Celerity. And Celerity is not even that bad. It's just hard to take advantage of that, right? Like, unless you got a fire team that's constantly throwing, that's the only time you can take advantage of it. But really, everything on this pulse rifle looks great, and I think it's going to be one of the best pulse rifles in the game. Now, before we move on from this, I do want to point out the new Adept mods that have been added to the game. First up, we have Adept Big One Spec. This one actually allows us to deal extra damage against powerful combatants, bosses, and vehicles. Now, I have no idea what that percentage is, but I know it's got to be something better than the 7.5% or 7.8% that we get from our current mods, at least for this one to be considered Adept. Another mod, though, that's also been given to us this season with Adepts is Adept Icarus Grip. Very interesting here. First up, it improves accuracy while airborne. On top of that, though, it gives us a +5 in our weapon range stat. Bungie's getting nutty, man. I love it. There's so many people that rock Icarus already on most of their weapons, especially here on PC. But now that you can get a +5 increase in range, on top of that increase in accuracy, yeah, this is going to be definitely one of the most popular mods for Adept weapons. And again, for my PvE players, you'll be able to get Adept mods in Grandmaster, Nightfall, or Deals. So don't feel like you're not going to be able to get any of these. No, you'll have access to all of the Adept mods last season and this season's. Moving on to our next weapon, we have the return of the Kinetic Pulse Rifle Time-Worn Spire. This is actually a 540 round per minute pulse, and we do not have any of these left, right? Have they all been sunset? Very interesting stuff on this one. First up, yes, it can roll with things like Rampage, Vorpal, which is nice, One for All, which is also nice, Iron Grip for that big bump in stability, which is very much needed on rapid fire pulse rifles. I love it, but let's take a look real quick. Iron Reach, massively improve weapon range at the cost of weapon stability. Now, this is a +20 in range, but a -40 in stability. These are those double edge perks. Some weapon types it works for, some weapon types not so much. Iron Reach would be fantastic for me on a shotgun. For this rapid fire pulse rifle, which has a lot of kick due to its rate of fire, I would suggest no to Iron Reach. It also does come with Iron Gaze, which kills off the range stat, but increases the aim assist. I wouldn't go with that either. I'm really leaning toward, at least for PvP, either a Rampage roll or an Iron Grip roll, and maybe even an Iron Grip roll in combination with moving target, maybe even mix things up with something like Quick Draw. And then for PvE, One for All, Rampage, Vorpal, all of those with Feeding Frenzy or even Subsistence would be fantastic. Either way it goes, there's a lot that this rapid fire pulse rifle brings to the table, most notably in its perks, but especially in the fact that the weapon comes with scopes. It's going to have more range than most other rapid-fire pulse rifles, especially when you compare it to things like Claws of the Wolf or even Horus Lease, two of my favorite other rapids that have now been sunset. Time-Worn Spire, though, should outcompete both of those. Moving on to our next weapon, we have extraordinary Rendition. This is actually a kinetic submachine gun, 750 rounds per minute, and I landed a couple rolls actually today that were so good. This submachine gun is absolutely nuts, and I want to start with the new perk Frenzy. Being in combat for an extended time increases the damage, handling, and reload speed for this weapon until you're out of combat. Now, first up, the game thinks you're in combat as long as you're in proximity of an enemy for 10 seconds. 10 seconds, Frenzy activates, and it activates whether you're holding the weapon, whether it's stowed, it doesn't matter. On top of that, even after killing an enemy and you're having to run to the next enemy, Frenzy will stick around for a little bit longer. Now, I have not extensively tested out this trait in terms of like its proximity, how close the enemy actually needs to be, but damage buff wise, you are looking at a 20% buff there in damage that stays with you as long as you've got enemies in your general surroundings. And in a game mode like Battlegrounds, that's pretty much all the time. Frenzy, to me, guys, is Master of Arms. It's Master of Arms married up with Feeding Frenzy. Due to the fact that you get that increase in reload speed and handling, it's those two traits merged into one. And even though Rampage can increase the damage past that point, its ease of use is nowhere near as good as Frenzy, especially against higher health targets where you just want a nice flat buff there to damage. Think Vorpal. Now, looking at the other traits, you do have One for All, you do have Rampage, Thresh, multi-kill clip on top of that. If I was going to go the multi-kill clip route, maybe multi-kill clip in surplus. For Rampage, maybe Rampage Overflow or Rampage Subsistence. For One for All, same thing. Any of those traits, Outlaw included, would perform just fine there with One for All. Now, the actual roll that I landed was Frenzy in Overflow, which is disgusting. You're talking about a 50+ round magazine on this SMG. I'm telling you guys, this thing is nasty. And for my controller users, submachine guns feel phenomenal for controller players. I played today with the controller using this 750 round per minute SMG that normally would feel terrible considering that its stability stat is 17, and my god did it feel stable. Now, as far as PvP goes, I cannot overlook Tap the Trigger. Tap the Trigger in combination with, say, something like Zen Moment, Surplus, Firmly Planted, those traits would make this SMG super consistent. Now, how does Frenzy perform inside of PvP? I don't know. I really don't. I'm gonna actually have to mess around with it to see if it's good. It's still a nice 20% buff, but again, depending on that proximity, you might not want to roll with it. If you are looking for a damage dealing perk for PvP though, either multi-kill clip or Rampage, either one of those will do you just fine. Moving on, we have another kinetic submachine gun, 900 rounds per minute, and I believe this is the Iron Banner submachine gun. Multimach CCX. Now, again, it's the Iron Banner weapon. A lot of people thought it was the Gambit weapon because it was green, but no, it's Iron Banner because you actually see down here, it could potentially roll with one of the Iron Banner perks. Things like Iron Gaze, Iron Grip, which might actually be good here on this SMG, especially Iron Grip with that increase in stability. This is a bullet hose. It shoots at 900 rounds per minute, even though controller's just got a ginormous bump there in its ability to handle submachine guns. More stability, it's always nice. It also comes with the Iron Reach perk. This is that one that kills stability, but buffs that range. Again, not a bad trait. I can definitely utilize it on certain weapons, but in this scenario, especially on an automatic weapon, I'm good, man. I think I'm gonna go with one of these other traits. Kill Clip, fantastic. Iron Grip, also a very good option. And again, One for All, don't overlook it, guys. As far as the secondary traits to combine it with, Dynamic Sway. It activates so fast on high rate of fire weapons, and it makes your weapon super vertical. This is such a good trait that really levels out the weapon, boosting that accuracy. That in combination with Iron Grip, sounds like a wet dream. You also have other options to go with. Killing Wind is always a great trait. Quick Draw. Say you're wanting to rock this as a secondary weapon, as a pull-out option. You're in dangerous territory. Quick Draw is always a good one to go with. But for my PvE players, I urge you to either check out Threat Detector Subsistence in combination with One for All. Maybe even boost that magazine perk with one of those mag perks, which is really nice considering that this SMG has a 36 round magazine. And yes, for my PvP players, that's right, this SMG comes with scopes, baby. I love the Model 6. That's my favorite. It boosts range and zoom, but not as much as the Model 8. I think the Model 8 does a little too much. Model 6 is just right, just enough. Overall, this SMG looks pretty good, guys. And I know some of you are already landing Iron Banner loot. For those that save their bounties, I wouldn't mind actually reviewing one of these as early as possible. Moving on to our next weapon, we have the Adept Auto Rifle, as well as the base auto rifle Shadow Price. It is an energy weapon, shoots at 450 rounds per minute. And yeah, this one's actually got some new traits as well. First up, Let's just start with the first column. We have Bottomless Grief. While you are the last living member of your fire team, each takedown refills your magazine. Again, kind of like Celerity, right? Like you're in a situation where this trait activates at like literally the worst of times, but sometimes you need a weapon for that. Bottomless Grief has intrigued me simply because I actually want to combine it with Unrelenting of all things, a trait that many of us just gloss over and pretend that doesn't exist, but Unrelenting actually allows us to trigger health regeneration when we defeat multiple targets. That in combination with Bottomless Grief seems like pretty amazing synergy. Now granted, unless your team is wiped, you're really not able to take advantage of Bottomless Grief. And if you're like me, you kind of do your builds and optimize it with the idea that your team is alive, right? Which takes us to a couple of the other options. You have Disruption Break, which cannot be overlooked when dealing with barrier champions. This is fantastic. Disruption Break, Overflow, Feeding Frenzy, Surplus, 4 times the charm. All of those are great here. You also have things like Dragonfly. And again, this weapon does do arc damage. So yeah. Shadow Price, Bacchus, a hell of a combination. Let's go. One for all. Dude, everything pretty much on this weapon looks good. One for all, Swashbuckler, even things like Thresh. Dude, there's not many ways you can go wrong with Shadow Price. On top of that, if you get the Adept version, it gets even nastier. Shadow Price looks good, guys. And again, from the Nightfall ordeals, it's dropping already. It's only at the Grandmaster Nightfalls do you get the Adept versions. Next weapon on the list, we have Imperial Needle. This is an energy combat bow with a draw time of 612. And it states that this bow is actually tied to the Challenger's Proving Quest, but it has some pretty decent options. And again, this season, we can utilize overload rounds with bows. Keep that in mind. Normally, for something like that, I like to utilize things like time payload or explosive payload. Unfortunately, that's not present on this bow, so we might not go that direction, but it does come with things like Frenzy. It also comes with a perk, Impulse Amplifier. This perk actually massively increases projectile velocity as well as increasing reload speed. And that reload speed is nice. I actually have it on a rocket launcher. It is equivalent to that of Surplus. Maybe not Surplus times 3, but like maybe times 1, times 2, somewhere around that area. It's just a nice flat buff there to reload speed. Now, I don't think velocity is going to play a role whatsoever, considering this is a bow, but maybe considering that bows actually shoot a physical projectile, this may have some secondary benefits that we just don't see on a stat sheet. But this bow also has some other things. Sneak Bow, which is actually much better than what people give it credit for. It got a buff last season where it actually prevents radar pings if you're crouched. You also have Archer's Tempo, Swashbuckler, Thresh, Opening Shots, a lot of good things. But again, the traits that intrigue me the most, Impulse Amplifier and Frenzy. Next up, we have a Year 1 fusion rifle, Cartesian Coordinate. This is a 540 charge time fusion. Not a very popular archetype, but maybe this one might sway us. It does come with things like Vorpal, alongside things like Thresh, High Impact Reserves, and of course, Backup Plan. Now, Backup Plan is nowhere near as strong as it was pre-nerf, but Backup Plan is actually still pretty strong on lower impact fusions, as in the damage reduction that high impact fusions receive from Backup Plan is not as steep here on Cartesian. It can also roll with things like Swashbuckler, Feeding Frenzy. That to me is a really good combination. This is a fast fire rate fusion rifle, popping shots off like crazy, getting that increase in reload speed. This may actually be a pretty good fusion for PvE. Moving on to our Gambit, or what appears to be our Gambit fusion rifle. This is actually a 660 charge time adaptive frame fusion. And man, does it have a ton of perks. This is a solar fusion rifle with literally everything under the sun. Things like One for All, Wellspring, Multi-Kill Clip, Tap the Trigger, Disruption Break, Demolitionist, Kill Clip, Backup Plan, High Impact Reserves, and a ton of other traits in that first column. Guys, I don't even know where to begin, but let's just try PvP, hands down. If you want to utilize this fusion to the fullest, firmly plan and tap the trigger all day long. Now, fusion rifles just got a buff inside of PvP. I have not actually tested them out since the changes, but always, 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 tap the trigger, firmly plan it have both been one of the nastiest trait combinations for fusions, especially on things like Arantel. I am curious to know how Surplus will work on this fusion, and if you wanted to go with a damage dealing perk like Kill Clip or even Multi-Kill Clip, absolutely. For PvE though, Feeding Frenzy, Surplus, in combination with any of the damage dealing perks, Kill Clip, Multi-Kill Clip, Swashbuckler, all those would be fantastic. Moving on to our ritual weapon for this season, or essentially our ritual weapon for this season, Salvager's Salvo. Turns out our data mine for this weapon was right, as it comes with Spike Grenades, Ambitious Assassin, Demolitionist, Vorpal Weapon, and chain reaction. Super, super nasty here, guys. On top of that, it does deal arc damage. I know a lot of people wanted this to be a kinetic, but you could still combine this with, say, things like Bacchus for that increase there in damage. Overall, this one really intrigues me. I have no idea how well chain reaction is going to perform on this, but I think depending on what you're going against, like if you're doing single target damage, obviously Vorpal's the way to go with Ambitious Assassin, but I almost want to go like a Demolitionist chain reaction route for dealing with multiple adds, right? Like if I'm chaining it with a grenade build of mine, I think those two in combination with each other should be pretty good, considering that activating your grenade ability reloads the weapon instantly. So you can just sit there going back and forth, depending on the amount of adds you're killing, that is. Moving on to our next weapon, we have Bottom Dollar. This is the Gambit hand cannon. And yes, it's a 120 round per minute hand cannon present in the energy slot. It does void damage. My friend Les got it this afternoon and he landed a nasty roll, essentially landed an explosive payload alongside surplus. I think that's a really good roll, but you can actually stretch it a little further. You can land things like rangefinder with explosive payload for that big bump there in range. Maybe you're looking for consistency inside of PvP and want to go with things like opening shot, but I want to take a look at high impact reserves. Can high impact reserves 2-tap on the bottom end of that magazine, considering this weapon is a high impact weapon and already does so much damage inside of Crucible? Maybe. I don't know. It might be able to, at least low resilience Guardians. Now, obviously, you're going to have to prime your weapon down to take advantage of high impact reserves, but it might be worth doing for that guaranteed 2-tap. For PvE players, though, I love that this weapon comes with Dragonfly, and considering that it's void, combine it all day long with Nezarec Sin. Let's go. Feeding Frenzy, 4 times the charm, surplus, rapid hit. Dude, there's so many good things on this hand cannon. It's just got a ton of rolls, which is both a good and a bad thing. Good, because it gives you lots of options. Bad, because landing that exact god roll might take forever. I might be gunning for that Rampage Subsistent combo, but who knows when I'm actually going to get it. Moving on, we have the Trials Energy Hand Cannon, which does solar damage, and yes, it's a 120 round per minute hand cannon. I thought it was going to be a 140. Turns out it is a 120. And there will also be an Adept version of this weapon, which Adept Icarus, here we come. Now, this weapon has a very limited amount of perks to choose from, but nothing here really boosting the range. Honestly, this 120 might be the hand cannon we try to just make into just the most bona fide, consistent 120 we possibly can. I like the idea of quick draw and moving target, maybe in something crazy like quick draw and snapshot. For PvP though, Rampage Rapid Hit was one of my favorite combos for Duke, and it's present right here on Igneous Hammer. Will it be as consistent as Duke? I don't know, man. I hope so. Next up, we have Palindrome. Yes, that Palin, the year 1 Palin. One of the ugliest weapons inside of Destiny, but man, did it make up for it in its lethality. Palindrome also comes with an Adept version of it, which I gotta say, looks better. It does. Much better than its base default color, and of course you can apply shaders, but Pally is a 140 round per minute hand cannon and it deals void damage. Also comes with things like One for All, Rampage, in combination with Overflow, Subsistence, and of course Bottomless Grief is also present on this weapon. So if you still wanted to rock that unrelenting Bottomless Reef combo, yeah, you can rock that. However, for me, I might even lean more toward a rangefinder quick draw combo for PvP, and maybe even a rangefinder killing wind combo. Get the increased range from rangefinder, and the moment you get killing wind, you get even more range. I'm speculating somewhere around 38 meters, depending on the range stat of this weapon and your particular role, but that could be really, really nasty here on Pally. Now, will high impact reserves make a big difference on this hand cannon for PvP? I think it's gonna make a big difference on 120s. 140s, not so much. I just don't think Pally's gonna be able to 1 crit 2 body. You know, maybe 2 crit 1 body, but we'll see. Next, we have the Third Axiom. Very similar to like Hopscotch Pilgrim. Pretty sure this is a Vanguard weapon though. It's present in the energy slot, shoots at 390 rounds per minute, and deals arc damage. Now, it also has a ton of traits. I mean, a ton to choose from. Now, for PvP, 390s are more of the consistent archetype, but not necessarily the best. They're just really dependent on you having pretty much the most consistent role you can possibly have. I love the idea of trying opening shot, though, with rangefinder. Like, what the hell is that? Huge bump in range, as well as that increase in accuracy on that opening shot. But to me, looking at this weapon, I'm loving the trait combos for PvE. Multi-kill clip, Feeding Frenzy, Dragonfly, Subsistence, One for All, Surplus, Rampage also on this weapon. Like we've seen in many of the other roles, Bungie has just gone balls out with the amount of traits we can choose from. So great for variety, gonna be hell trying to lock down that god roll. Moving on to our next weapon, Eternal Blazon. Looks similar to Oxygen, not really. Actually looks more similar to Cuirass, I was corrected today. But yes, essentially the same gun model in a lot of ways. I know not everyone's crazy about scout rifles, but listen to me. Scout rifles feel fantastic.
That's what she said.
And this is a 200 round per minute scout rifle that deals arc damage. And there's so many things I want to do to this thing. First up, you've got kill clip in combination with rapid hit all day, baby. You also have one for all, overflow, let's go. And of course, disruption break. Now, full auto is also present on this weapon. And there are times that I just like to lay down the fire button and just forget everything in front of me and just let the weapon do its thing. And considering that the base reload speed of this weapon is 61, I think you can get away with using full auto over rapid hits. Of course, you're going to be missing out on the stability, but you can make up for it with, say, ricochet rounds. I wouldn't mind something like full auto, though, and kill clip inside of PvP. I think just sitting there peppering your enemies from afar, especially considering you have these Omnioculus scopes, which has beautiful fat reticles. Thick boys. Fantastic for landing consecutive crit after crit after crit. I like impulse. I like signal. I like transmission. All of those are great. But the other scopes too are good. Torch is good. Flash is good. Pretty much anything but those 3 middle scopes. Jolt, spark, candle. The rest of them to me, I really, really like. Hands down, guys, I think this scout rifle is going to be nuts. Moving on. Oh, one of the OGs. D2 vanilla weapons. And even the beta. I think this was in the beta. The Void Energy Shotgun Retrofuturist. This is a lightweight frame shotgun. And don't kid yourself, I know it's a lightweight frame, but man, this bad baby could map. I want us to take a look at this together. First up, quick draw. Yes, present on this thing, automatic win. You can also pair it with things like Swashbuckler, Snapshot if you want a weapon that's just stupid crazy in its handling. For PvE though, you can still lean on things like Trench Barrel, maybe even Trench Barrel alongside Pulse Monitor, Feeding Frenzy, even Dual Loader. However, I think One for All might be the better option for PvE, especially with things like Feeding Frenzy. I think that's just gonna be the combination to go with. And again, for PvP, maxing out that range, quick draw snapshot, full choke, Cuirass rounds, I think Retro could potentially be a replacement for when Fellwinter's finally does get sunset, and for those of us that did not get a Gonro CQC. Next, we have the Sidearm Brass Attack. This is an energy sidearm that does void damage, and the archetype that it's present in is actually the aggressive burst archetype. This is that 2-burst sidearm. Think Breachlight, which was one of my favorite sidearms that just got sunset too. But this bad baby does come with Surplus, which I think is fantastic on a sidearm, Feeding Frenzy, Rampage, One for All, and of course, Frenzy is also present on the sidearm. Now, talking to Les, he said this sidearm had a lot of kick, a lot of buck. So I would suggest loading out maybe stability on this thing. And I know we didn't go over the curated role, and we haven't really gone over curated roles for any of these weapons, but honestly, I think Light GG has just been making up curated roles. It's kind of like the weapons from last season. There wasn't any curated roles, but Light GG said there was. So that's why I haven't really been touching on curated roles, but there is a curated role present for this one. Overflow, Sympathetic Arsenal. Even if that's a real trait combination, I don't think it's going to be one that I go with. Our next weapon on this list is the Keening. Another sidearm, shoots at 300 rounds per minute and deals arc damage and a ton, I mean a ton of random rolls. I don't know, guys. I kind of go in and out with my love for 300s. Do I want to give it a try? Absolutely. I want to give every weapon a try. For PvP, some sidearms just don't feel good, despite whatever god roll you may have on it. However, I am intrigued with a snapshot moving target roll, and perhaps a multi-kill clip, surplus, or rapid hit combo. That to me would be a great option, and that could probably work even inside of PvE. You do have things like One for All, Thresh, Dragonfly, and Killing Wind is also present on this gun. This is one of those that it really just comes down to the sidearm itself. If the sidearm feels good, then the right rolls are only going to elevate this weapon. If the sidearm feels like trash, well, no roll is going to make that weapon feel better. Moving on to the Energy Sniper Rifle that shoots at 90 rounds per minute, Far Future, which deals solar damage. This weapon rolls with Frenzy, Opening Shot, Multi-Kill Clip, Demolitionist, Thresh. Dude, there's just a lot of different options here. Wellspring as well. For PvP though, for PvP, I like Opening Shot a lot. Opening Shot, Quick Draw, hell yeah. You also have Moving Target Opening Shot, which could work. For PvE players though, I think Frenzy in combination with say something like Slide Shot would be pretty good, or even Surplus, but definitely Surplus in multi-kill clip. And again, for my players that are trying to take advantage of their neutral game abilities, Wellspring, Demolitionist, both of those are really good. Next, we have Frozen Orbit, another sniper rifle. What is this? The LDR, right? This actually drops from Crucible matches. It's a high impact weapon, and it comes with essentially short gaze. I mean, that's short gaze in all its glory. Now, I know it has like that Her Benevolence look to it with that front, but all of these kind of use similar gun models. Now, Frozen Orbit has a ton of traits to choose from. Most aggressive sniper rifles feel slow. They feel sluggish, which is why I want you to lean towards Snapshot, Firmly Planted, or even Snapshot Moving Target. Both of those will do fantastic. They've always done fantastic on sniper rifles, especially aggressives. For PvE players though, triple tap Vorpal all day long. 9 times out of 10, you're doing damage to high health targets. Vorpal is always being procced, and you don't have to work to get that damage up. It's not like Kill Clip or Multi-Kill Clip. I know this weapon does void damage, so it's doing less damage than its kinetic counterparts, but I think this weapon can still hang damage-wise inside of PvE. Hands down, guys, I think this sniper rifle is going to be really, really good. If it performs the way I think it's going to perform, this sniper rifle might become one of the best snipers inside of Crucible. Next up, we have a return of a linear fusion rifle, Tarantula. This weapon does arc damage, and I know not everybody's crazy about linear fusions, but we just lost Line in the Sand, man. It hurts. It hurts so much. Tarantula will not be able to fill that void, but it could try. It does come with things like Dragonfly, Rampage, Feeding Frenzy, Field Prep, and for PvP, you can always take advantage of Moving Target, Firmly Planted, which is disgusting on a linear fusion. Considering the target acquisition that linear fusions already have, boom, more aim assist, let's go. Now granted, outside of Arbalest, no one really uses linear fusions inside of PvP, so maybe Tarantula will convince us, maybe. Next on the list, we have Threaded Needle, another linear fusion rifle, but way meaner looking. Oh yeah, this bad baby's got it all. Vorpal, Rapid Hit, Clown Cartridge, Auto-Loading Holster, Multi-Kill Clip, and of course, Frenzy. Hands down, this is going to be the PvE linear fusion. It does do void damage, but I think this weapon might have a shot. I do love the idea of Vorpal over Frenzy. Not that Frenzy's not good. Frenzy's a fantastic perk, but I know with Vorpal, I'll always have that damage buff. Whereas Frenzy, I got to kind of pay attention to what I'm doing. And considering this is a linear fusion rifle, 9 times out of 10, I'll only be using it on high health targets. Next on the list, we have the Swarm. This is a machine gun that deals arc damage and might actually give Thunderlord a run for its money. It shoots at 360 rounds per minute. It's high impact. It has tap the trigger, dynamic sway, or tap the trigger surplus. This bad baby is going to be a monster inside of PvP. And if you can control the recoil, killing wind, tap the trigger all day long. On top of that, you can roll it with things like One for All, with Outlaw or Surplus, Dragonfly, Vorpal. Hands down, this is looking like a good machine gun. And of course, you can get the Adept version, which can be slotted with Adept Mods. Next on the list is Code Duello. I'm saying that right? Duello? Dude, I landed like 4 of these earlier. This rocket launcher is nasty. Deals solar damage. Can roll with things like Chain Reaction. You want Warmind cells? Welcome to your next best friend. On top of that, we have a new trait, Lasting Impression. Rockets attach on impact and detonate after a delay, increasing the blast radius and damage. Now, does this stack with impact casing, which increases damage on direct hits? I don't know, but it's interesting. Very, very interesting. You also got things like Ambitious Assassin, Frenzy, Cluster Bombs, you get it, but obviously Chain Reaction, Lasting Impression, both of those traits has my complete undivided attention. Now, the traits that would be best combined with both of those, I don't really know. I think Field Prep's pretty good. Auto Loading's always good for running and gunning. Surplus is fantastic for damage phases, but I think Field Prep might outrun it due to that increase in ammo reserves. But there's also a new trait, Impulse Amplifier, which massively increases that projectile velocity and it increases that reload speed. Does that do anything else? Does the increased velocity have anything to do with the damage? No, not normally. Not normally, not ever. Shouldn't be the case. Maybe it's the case here. I'm kind of hopeful, but we'll see. I do know that the reload bump, though, from Impulse is really nice and noticeable. Next weapon on the list, we're almost done, guys. Royal Entry. This is the Vanguard rocket launcher in the precision frame archetype. It deals void damage and has a ton of traits. It too has the opportunity to roll with things like Lasting Impression, Chain Reaction, even something crazy like One for All. Look at that. You blast a number of ads, you proc One for All. Oh, that looks nasty. On top of that, you can pair it with things like Auto-Loading Holster, Field Prep, even Genesis. I know we don't really talk about Genesis, but for those moments you do break a combatant shield with the same energy type. Boom, insta reload. I really like this. One for all on this one really interests me, considering it's so easy to hit multiple targets with a rocket launcher. This could be really, really nice. What would make it even better though is if you can get one for all and chain reaction together. Next on the list, we have Sola's Scar. This is the Trial Sword. It is one of the caster frame swords. It deals solar damage. And yes, it comes with chain reaction. What the hell? Now, chain reaction, again, creates an elemental damage explosion. And considering this is solar, it would be doing solar elemental explosion, thus meaning this sword can be combined with Warmind cells. But I will say this, on previous caster frame swords, I do like Vorpal and On Guard. Considering I normally just get the weapon out, do a single heavy attack, and then I put it away. On Guard is really nice, as you can get that immediate damage buff when swapping to the weapon. And Vorpal is just really nice for that passive increase in damage. But hands down, the most intriguing thing on the sword is just chain reaction. And we do have an Adept version for this sword as well, which can be slotted with things like Adept Impact, Adept Mag, Adept Big One Spec. Dude, imagine an Adept Dragonfly in the future, like an Adept Explosive mod. Make chain reaction even more explosive. So guys, those are all your weapons for this season, at least what's presently in the database, what we can actually see. We're going to be trying to review all of these individually. All I can say, there is way more weapons than what we're normally used to in a single season. So if you like loot, Season the Chosen, yeah, it's got a lot of it, as well as a ton of traits to choose from on each one of these. So be looking out for God Roll reviews from us, guys. Y'all have been wonderful. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.